What is going on, guys? Pat in the shop, and tonight, the moment a lot of you guys have been waiting for, the dyno results for our Vortec Headed 406. Let's check it out. So last week, I was able to run two engines on the dyno. One being this engine, our 406 with Vortec heads, and another one being a nice 383 stroker for a customer. A lot of guys have been waiting for me to dyno this engine because we were going to be doing a lot of testing. The one test that everyone was waiting for was the Rhoads lifters test, which we did, and that's going to be a video coming up. And it's basically, do Rhoads lifters, how do they react with power on the dyno? If you're not familiar with Rhoads lifters, go back a few videos and check out the video on that. I'll put a link below. But tonight we're going to be talking about the baseline numbers on our 406. We were real careful when we were dynoing this thing, actually both engines, because we were doing a bunch of testing, but we're real careful to try to keep things consistent. On the dyno, I call them money runs, where you'll cool the engine down, you'll have hot oil, and you'll cool the engine right down. Some guys will run them at like 140 degrees of like coolant temp with hot oil to try to get these real kind of, you'll pick up power, sometimes like 20 horsepower, 30 foot-pounds of torque, depending on what it is. So I didn't run this. So these numbers you're going to see and all the comparative data for these dyno runs for this 406 and the 383 stroker, the coolant was all within like 5 degrees. So and it was a realistic coolant temperature, 175 to 180. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the dyno results and comparing it to other dyno results. Always know what that coolant temp is, because it does make a big difference when you're trying to compare things and make those little changes and little details. So these engines were actually ran at the full like operating temperature, 175, 100 to 180, 182 degrees, in that ballpark. So just keep that in mind. So I call this bad girl right here the Swap Meet 406 because it is a kind of a collaboration of used parts. And the bottom end is essentially just a rebuilt 406. It's using the big dish pistons. There's nothing really performance at all about the bottom end on this thing. I took this engine in originally on trade. It was rebuilt and then had a cam failure. And the guy just jumped ship on it because it basically needed to be rebuilt again. So I took everything good out of it. I fixed everything up in the bottom end. The bearings ate some debris. I changed the heads because the heads were just like the stock heads. So on this thing with our stock bottom end, we basically have a new top end. So if you're trying to build up a 400, you're basically the same thing. This is just a freshened up 400 small block with a 30 over piston. But the top end, I decided to try a set of Vortec heads on this thing because if you're not familiar with my channel, I like Vortec heads. Not typically something I would run on a 400, but the Vortec heads are quite good for a stock casting, so I decided to run those. All the tricks have been done to them as far as I upgraded to 1.6 exhaust, which I find is a pretty good upgrade on them. 1.6 exhaust valves, some porting, some mild porting on the intake, but still retaining the 1.94 factory valve size on the intake. Upgraded it with Beehive valve springs. And I have videos about how to do that, but the guides haven't been cut or anything like that. And then the heads were actually milled down to 60 cc's. So a little bit of work, but there's still a factory Vortec casting. And I also drilled them for steam holes. The 400s have steam holes, so when you're running a cylinder head, it's really a good idea to make sure you have those steam holes drilled to prevent air pockets in between the Siamese cylinders. So Vortec heads, stock bottom end, Vortec heads intake. I was going to run a Summit intake on this thing, but I had this air gap style Vortec intake that I decided to run. I'll put a link below on this intake. It's just a real budget offshore intake. And then we ran this with a 750 Holley. This is a carburetor. Again, for consistencies, I like to use the same carburetor on the engines kind of in this horsepower range. and I always run them with this basic 750 Holley. Rocker arms are a set of Assault Racing 1.6s. I'll put a link up for that. Again, a budget rocker arm. Ran it with just a regular HEI distributor. So nothing real fancy here. And the camshaft. The camshaft is a flat tappet cam. It's a Summit Racing part number. Where are we? Summit Racing 1203. I'll put a picture of the cam card up. 228, 236 at 50 on a 108 lobe separation. And then with the 1.6 rocker arm, I'll put the valve lift. I think it was just over 500 lift, 528 on the exhaust, something like that. So a real basic build. So this will give you a good indication on if you were to take a stock bottom end 400 essentially and put a Vortec top end on it with a dual plane intake like this and a Summit cam, flat tappet cam, what kind of power you're going to run. So the dyno results we're going to be talking today are just with regular hydraulic lifters, not with the Rhoads lifters. Let me show you what kind of power it made. All right, so take a look here at the dyno sheet. Again, this says this is the 406 750 carb. This is with the Delco regular hydraulic lifters and a tapered combo spacer flipped upside down. This is this aluminum spacer. This is the right way, well, according to them, but we actually run them upside down. I have a video about that. So this is our baseline run. I'm not saying this is the best run because I don't believe it is the best. It's not the best run, but this is the baseline run for comparative data on other results we have coming up. But this is a good indication of what the motor made as a baseline. So 3,800, we made a peak of 477.4 foot-pounds of torque, and at 5,200, 426 horsepower. This thing idles with 11 inches of vacuum at 800 RPM. It has a great sounding idle. I'll put a little video of that. And again, this is the baseline, and I've put all the data into graphs so we can compare data of things coming up. Okay, so there's our baseline for our 406. 477 foot-pounds of torque, 426.4 horsepower. This is pretty decent results I would expect from something like this when we take in account that it is a stock dish piston, basically a stock bottom end, and Vortec heads. These are only 170-ish cc runners, a little small for a 406. So decent torque and 426 horsepower. If we were maybe to swap this thing to a roller, we can definitely get some more power out of it. But with that 9.38 to 1 compression with the dish piston, it's pretty much typical of what I expected. But when you think about it in this aspect, so we have a 426 horsepower engine. With this bottom end from factory, these engines were rated at 170 horsepower, 180 horsepower, thinking depending on the year. Not too great, really. So we have well over doubled the horsepower rating of this 400 with a set of Vortec heads and a decent dual plane intake and a bigger camshaft. So this could have been, if GM didn't kill everything with emissions back in the day, we could have had a nice engine if they had some decent flowing heads on these 400s. This is a pretty easy power for what it is with a flat tappet camshaft, if you ask me, a hydraulic flat tappet camshaft. So in just about any car, 477 foot-pounds of torque, you're going to be smoking the tires off pretty easily. So a pretty decent combination, I think, for what it is. So a couple questions for you guys. So this is with the regular lifters. What happens when we added the variable duration lifters? Did they give us more torque? They definitely give us more vacuum. I did a video about that. But did it give us more torque plus super top end power, because that's what they claim. But a lot of guys will claim with these variable duration lifters, it kills the top end power. So comment below, let me know what you think. We also did some spacer testing. We ran it up against my favorite spacer here, which is my tapered aluminum spacer from Speedmaster. It's just a cheap spacer, but this thing always has good results, especially when we run it upside down. We ran it against these really nice dimpled spacers. So this was a tapered combo one from Polymer Products. They sent us these spacers, which is 3D printed, and it's a dimple spacer. And then this one's really neat because it's actually designed for a dual plane intake, and it's kind of a neat design. So we ran those. So I'll post a video of the results of that. I wanted to see what happened when we switched this thing from 94. So this was all set up and done on 94. What would happen when we swapped it and ran it on 87 without touching anything, without doing anything else other than changing the fuel? Because there's a lot of guys who will claim if it doesn't detonate, the 87 octane is more volatile and it will make more power and torque. And some guys will claim that an engine in the 9-to-1 compression with something like this, with a you know, a dish piston, which with no quench and all that stuff, will detonate and we'll be able to run an 87 octane, and you should see the power drop off. So let me know what you think. Did this engine successfully run on 87 octane without any timing adjustments? Ran as we did with 94. If you have any questions about the build, comment below. I can get into more detailed if guys want that about certain things. Just got to let me know what you guys want to see. So don't forget to hit that like button, and if you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. I appreciate my subscribers. And again, any questions, comment below. Thanks, guys.